Well, the next phase of Treasurer Jim Chalmers' economic reform was revealed today as he cuts red tape for Australian business. For energy companies, there's a sting in the tail as the government seeks to increase the petroleum resource rent tax. Chalmers today said environmental approval practices will be sped up.
We will clarify consultation requirements for offshore oil and gas storage regulatory approvals, making consultation more targeted and more effective. And will provide better upfront guidance on when approvals are required so proponents know if their project needs to go through the process. Our changes are designed to be better for the environment, better for business and better for our economy.
But as I said, the government will also eliminate 500 tariffs that Chalmers calls nuisance tariffs, which strangle productivity, weigh business down with red tape but raise little revenue for government.
Removing these tariffs will streamline around $8.5 billion worth of annual trade. It will save businesses more than $30 million in compliance costs each year, 120 over the next 4.
But is this the type of microeconomic reform that can kickstart our economy? The Treasurer says the fight against inflation is almost done. He wants the economy set for growth. But even at the summit today, many warned about the ongoing risk of inflation and the consequential higher interest rates that could be needed. Someone else who's warned about this is Warren Hogan, independent economist and a consultant with the small business lender Judo Bank, who joins me now. Warren, many thanks for your time. This is the real dilemma, isn't it? You go for growth, but you're going to get inflation if you do try and get that growth.
Yeah, hi, Ross. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that we're still a long way from having this inflation genie back in the bottle, and to declare victory and go for growth too early, I think, is a very risky strategy. Very similar to what happened in the mid-70s, and we all know how that ended. So I think that the Treasurer is obviously changing his rhetoric, his tone, and I think this is really just sort of paving the way for probably a little bit more spending in the budget, cost of living and these things. But, you know, we all know that this is because it's ahead of an election.
OK, so, yeah, I get that, but then go back to some of those moves that he's made, raising more cash out of the petroleum resource rent tax, but getting rid of these 500 sort of nuisance tariffs, as he calls them. That at least is a bit of reform. That is actually helping the country go forward. The question is whether there were 5,000 tariffs he could have got rid of.
Yeah, look, I think we should always welcome this sort of housekeeping, and it's really what this is. It's about going through and making the time and effort on the part of the Treasury and the Treasurer's office to get rid of these, as he said, nuisance tariffs. They're not going to change the dial on anything. They're literally going to cost the government a few $1 million a year in lost revenue, and that's probably the best indicator of what sort of impact it can have on the economy, i.e. virtually none. But it still is a good thing to do, because I think one of the real problems with the Australian government is we don't get rid of all this sort of legacy legislation and laws that are no longer relevant. So I give them full marks for that. As for the PRT, it all remains to be seen whether that's going to get through the House and what that'll actually look like. But again, I think generally speaking, the tone of what he's saying is moving in the right direction. OK, so we see numbers at the moment saying that the tax take of government is becoming amongst the highest that it's been as compared with our economy, our GDP. What I'm wondering, I spoke with Lucy Ellis, the former Reserve Bank Deputy Governor of Economics, who's now the Chief Economist of Westpac. She's in favour of indexing the tax scales to limit the amount of growth that really the government gets and to make certain that people's wages keep up. What's your own sense as to whether the government would do this? Look, I doubt they will do this, and I think the reasons are well known. I think the government, the ALP, generally like to grow the size of government, so they're all for bracket creep. And of course, the other side of politics loves to give periodic tax cuts and get the political benefit of that. So I don't think it's politically likely to happen, but what I do think is it's a good idea. I agree with Lucy Ellis. And I think having 2.5% indexation reflects nicely on the RBA's target and creates a broader discipline for fiscal policy. It really does raise a big debate about what happens with our tax system in this country. Whether you allow people, because of wage rises, to ultimately go into those higher tax brackets and thus go backwards, whether that gives incentive to work harder or to take an extra job or to really do some overtime, whatever it might be. And I think this is getting to a point where we will have to do something in the next 5 years. Not only are we overly reliant on income taxes, we're overly reliant on the top income earners to pay those taxes. And this will get unsustainable. So I think, of course, indexation is an important issue. Bracket creep is an important issue. But we have big issues more generally in our tax system, and it isn't looking like it's being addressed, but it will need to if we're going to have a sustainable footing going into the decade ahead.
Okay, and just in about 5 seconds, it really is that this puts pressure on the Reserve Bank, doesn't it, that otherwise could be shared with government?
It does. I mean, the government isn't playing its part in pulling back on this economy. So it looks okay at the moment, but next year, who knows? There could be more upward pressure on inflation and interest rates.
Warren Hogan, always good to have in the program. Many thanks for your time.